Hello, Booktube. I went back to the Brattle Bookshop first thing this morning. Those of you who are new to the channel, I can't help but look with distress on the fact that we are now halfway to the milestone I have commanded we never reach. The last time I said this was a 12 nay channel, we had 1,100 subscribers. Now we have 1,105. Now we're halfway to 12 nay. But anyway, that at least betokens that there are new people watching, some. And the Brattle Bookshop, for those of you who don't know, is a used bookstore in Boston. It's great. I've been a customer there for a very long time. I go all the time. I love it. It has huge turnover, and it has a gigantic sale lot next to the store, full of thousands of books for $1, $3, and $5. Like I told somebody there today, it's if you don't have a car, if you have to stop when you reach your carrying limit, it's virtually impossible to spend a lot of money at the Brattle unless you go up to their third floor, which has antique and collectible books, first editions and rare editions, that sort of thing. I never go up there, almost never. I only go up there to I did a vlog there once where I went up to the third floor just for peace and quiet, but I go to the Brattle as often as I can, once a week. I used to go every day. You could go every day, and you wouldn't be bored. You'd see new things every day. But I went first thing this morning, and I waited until I had as much as I could carry, and then I stopped. Now I'm going to show you the pile of books that I got. The pile embodies a lot of the axioms that have come to define the Brattle for me, whether it's second chances or the Brattle will provide, or even latterly, Booktube peer pressure. There's quite a bit of all of that here. But even this pile is not everything that I lugged back here. I also lugged back presents for other people that I'm not showing you. But we can show you these, and we'll start off with Booktube peer pressure. This first book is a hardcover copy of a book that I got an advance copy of. I reviewed it, I think. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it down below. And I liked it, but I thought no more about it. And then I watched Britta on Britta Pola's channel. I watched Britta talk about this book, and I love that. I absolutely love it when I watch a booktuber whose judgment on books that I respect hold up a book that I have already sort of read and dealt with. I love it when those videos make me think, oh, maybe I should go back and read that again. And sure enough, I found The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. This is by Elizabeth Tova Bailey, and it's the story of Elizabeth Tova Bailey being bedridden and discovering that a wild snail is living on a plant next to her bed. According to her, there are days when she has no energy to do anything more than roll over and just watch this creature. And a weird bond forms between the two of them. This is a beautifully written book. I don't think I've ever seen it in hardcover. I got the advance copy from Algonquin Books, and I never got a finished copy. So this is my finished copy. So I'm going to read it again because of Britta. She really liked it. I remember liking it. I had minor reservations here and there, but we'll see if those hold up. Then this next one is a UK trade paperback. I love UK trade paperbacks. This is Military History, Juliet Barker's book on Agincourt, with the classic photo UK cover. I had this, I think this had an American version, or maybe I got a British hardcover at one point or other. This is a really good study of the battle. Really strong on the topography, the actual ground of Agincourt, which a lot of Agincourt studies stint that in favor of the weaponry, especially the longbows at Agincourt. That's the thing that most people talk about. But Barker makes a really strong case that the actual topography, the way the troops were crowded in at one end instead of the other, was the deciding factor, far more than the longbows. I remember loving this, so I'm happy to have it. I put it on the shelf. Then we have two Penguin Classics. I don't always get every Penguin Classic that I see at the Brattle. I have brought my Penguin Classic bookcase under control. For years it was not in control. It had Penguin Classics of titles and authors that I don't like enough to keep. Penguin, I had multiple duplicates, ridiculous amounts of excess. I brought that under control so that it's able to be in one ordinary bookcase, and I have controlled my Penguin buying since then. But That's not an ironclad rule. I'm happy to get them if I see them and they look interesting. Like this one, for instance, which is a penguin that I've never had. This is the selected works of John Wilmot, the second Earl of Rochester. A slim little thing. He was too busy roistering to produce a lot of art, but he was a fairly good satirist, a fairly good poet. Not nearly as great as people like to make out. Always beware when there is a title attached to a poet, when there's a hereditary title attached to a poet, always beware. It's always a signal for people to overpraise. Same thing is true with prose as well. If there's a title involved, sift the prose or poetry carefully, because the critics are not to be trusted when it comes to nobility. I confess I'm not so much in love with Rochester's work that I got this book for his work. I got it for the notes and the introduction, which I've never read. Rochester was on-again, off-again best friend of King Charles II. He was as often loved and feted at court as he was banished from court. He was banished from court quite often. And he died very young. He died in his 33rd year of multiple end-stage venereal diseases. He didn't have just one. He had, I believe, all of the venereal diseases. And the thumbnail versions of his life, I'm sure the one that's listed, that's given in this book, will do the same thing. Thumbnail versions of his life like to gloss over that. They like to say, well, he made a quip on his deathbed and then passed away very quietly and very peacefully. That's a complete lie. His death was protracted and horrifying. I know some of the details, and some of the details you would not want to hear. Some of the details of end-stage syphilis or gonorrhea are just grotesque, just the ultimate in grotesquerie. I'm not that I'm going to be thinking of that while I read this, but I'm thinking of that because that's why this book is so thin. That's why we don't have a collected works of Rochester that's 5 times his size. He did like to write, and he was banished from court so often that he was in one of his country estates often enough to have the time to write. But he had other things to do. Anyway, this next one is a case of Booktube peer pressure. This time it's collective peer pressure because we're heading into Victober, the month when all of Booktube celebrates all things Victorian. And I don't think I've made a Victober TBR. I don't usually do that sort of thing because I'll do a lot of Victorian reading in November. I don't have to set aside the 3 books that I'm going to hope to get to. I don't have a job. I don't have loved ones or family or career or personal hygiene or anything like that. So it's not like the rest of you where you're trying to carve out which parts of your TBR will be for Victober. I can just indulge myself in Victorian reading throughout the month. So I don't really make a TBR, but I do have it in mind. If Victorian things come up at the Brattle, and a couple of them did today. This first one is a rebuy. It also is a Penguin Classic, but my Penguin Classic of this thing is in rotten shape because I go to it so often. I use it so much. And so when I saw this thing, this is in absolutely perfect condition. It's the Penguin book of Victorian verse, but in beautiful, perfect condition, just totally untouched. When I'm hard on my books, and my Penguin book of Victorian verse, the one I have in the little book room, I'll be able to honorably retire it because it's falling apart, and this thing is good for 10 reads. So those are the 2 Penguin Classics that I got. Then this next one is a classic example of the Brattle will provide. I always say that about the Brattle because their turnover is so high that if you see something on Booktube or out in the world, and you think, well, I'd kind of like that, there is no reason, for me anyway, since I have access to the Brattle and I'm there all the time, there's no reason for me to go straight away to eBay or Amazon and try and find a $12 copy of that thing that some schmuck in Ohio can send to me having lied about its contents and about its condition. There's no reason for me to do that. Instead, I can just wait. If I wait, I will surely see it at the Brattle. And this is a particular case because I actually saw a copy of this at the Brattle the last time I was there. But it was a hardcover without a dust jacket, and it was falling apart. It was in crappy condition. It was unsalvageable, which is rare for the Brattle sale lot. Usually the books that are out there are in pretty good condition, but this one was unsalvageable. And I left it. And that's a heartbreak. That's a heartbreak to do, because you never know when you're going to see it again. I left it, and I just told myself, the Brattle will provide. And the Brattle provided today not only a copy of the same book with a dust jacket, but in one of those Mylar library protective sheaths so that I don't ever have to worry about things. This is Kenneth Roberts, the the author of Rabble in Arms and Arundel, and this is for authors only, a collection of essays of his that I saw at the Brattle. Does this cover come off? Yeah, I saw this looking like that, just a naked hardcover. Only the pages were coming off the backing. The back cover was almost in two pieces. A lot of the pages were ragged. I imagine that someday, years from now, I might find it in a hardcover, but I never imagined that I'd find it in this kind of shape. This is fantastic. So this is just a collection of essays. There are a couple that are explicitly literary. I'll reread those today and leave the rest for some other time. But I love the way Kenneth Roberts writes, and I'm very happy that the Brattle provided this so fast. That was amazing, just literally from one visit to the next. Then this next one is heavily suffused with dude bro. You'd think that would mean I'd steer clear of it, but I love these kinds of books. This is Why I Write, Thoughts on the Craft of Fiction. It's edited by Will Blythe, and it contains a long list of authors I don't like. Who do we have here? Rick Bass I like. Pat Conroy I don't like. Richard Ford I tend not to like. Mary Gateskill I tend not to like. Elizabeth Gilbert I tend not to like. Barry Hannah I like. Jim Harrison I tend to like. Amy Hempel I've never really liked. Dennis Johnson I tend to like. Tom Jones no. Norman Mailer no. Terry McMillan largely not. Sometimes, but largely not. Rick Moody no. Ann Patchett usually not, although the nonfiction that she's written in 2021 and 2020 has been standout. James Salter, Robert Stone, William Volman, David Foster Wallace. These are heavy dude bro authors. But it's a collection of them writing about why they write, and I love that kind of essay. Even if it turns out to be flapdoodle, I imagine, I am certain that most of the stuff in here most of the pieces in here will have at least a few items, gems, little bits that I will love. So I'll just put it on the nightstand and go a couple of pieces at a time. But I'm a sucker for these kinds of books, Why I Write. None of you are listening to me. You're paying attention to the baby. Or temperamental star. Let's see here. Okay, this next one is a UK trade paperback. This is Roy Porter. And this is his book on Edward Gibbon. There's Edward Gibbon on the cover there, a merciless character that's very accurate. Roy Porter was, if memory serves, mostly a medical historian, a historian of medicine and madness and primitive operations and that sort of thing. But he also had a sweet spot for the Enlightenment, and this book is terrific. I've read it before a few times. I think it's the best book ever written on Gibbon. Out of, admittedly, very few books written on Gibbon. Why there aren't more histories of this guy, I don't know. His life wasn't all that interesting. I guess maybe that's the reason. But considering that he wrote a monument of English literature, I'll definitely take this. Definitely. I don't have Gibbon represented in my biography bookcases in any other way except this book. Then this next one is part of a series. We've already seen this series. The series is The English Countryside. And a few Brattle trips ago, we saw a book called The English Country House by Ralph Dutton. And it lovely original, I think these are first editions. This is the way they looked originally. They've got these beautiful color covers that wrap around, largely unspoiled. And I said at the time that I got The English Country House, I have a big sweet spot for The English Country House, because I've been in all of them, and also because I think they're fascinating. And I mentioned at the time that I'd like a lot of these other books, a lot of the other books in this series, and I thought the Brattle will provide. Often, the chances are, there's at least a good chance, 30, 45%, that the person who had The English Country House got the whole series. And that The English Country House just happens to be, by the random sorting in the Brattle basement, the first of the series to come up in the sale lot, but that all the others will turn up eventually. It's either that, or the person, someone 100 years ago, 80 years ago, saw The English Country House in that series in a bookstore and thought that's the only one I'm interested in. And I can understand that too. But the odds got better today because I found by F.H. Crossley, The English Abbey. See what I mean? This is just lovely. Just these lovely covers. So now I have The English Abbey, and again, in one of these Mylar protective things, to go right along with The English Country House. That's fantastic. And it puts me in mind of a couple of the other books in this series. There's one on the old inns of England, There's one on the Countryman's England. I would love that. There's Ivor Brown's The Heart of England. There's, let's see here, the Cathedrals of England. Oh, would love to find that in here. I'll keep an eye out. If two of them showed up at the Brattle in a short amount of time, maybe the others are coming to the Brattle. That would be great. But in the meantime, this is all about abbeys, that both the ones that stayed functioning and the ones that fell to ruin all throughout the English countryside. I've been to every one of them, so I can't wait to read about them. This came out a while ago too. This is the 1930s, 1936. So it would be a lot before some of those things went into the hands of the National Trust, I would imagine. Then this next one we have an example of, again, it's the Brattle will provide, but sometimes you have to take what the Brattle gods offer you, even though it's not exactly what you want, just to show that you revere them. And if you play ball, they will reward you. The other day, a month ago or so at the Brattle, I found a biography of Richard Brinsley Sheridan, the dramatist, the political provocateur, Sheridan. I found a biography of him the other day at the Brattle, a month ago at the Brattle. I showed it to you on one of my 5,000 videos, so you're never going to find it out. But I read it. I mean, I showed it to you, and I talked about how it wasn't exactly the Sheridan biography that I want. I read it, and it's kind of good. It was a little dry. It was kind of good. And you might think, well, if you weren't sure, why did you get it? I got it because there's a Sheridan biography that I do love, one that I think is fantastic. And I thought, well, if I get the one that I don't want, maybe the Brattle gods will smile on me, and I will see the one that I do want. And that happened today. I got The Traitor's Kiss by Vincent OToole. A terrific biography of Sheridan, 10 times more readable and more interesting, more intelligent in terms of interpreting Sheridan's work than any other Sheridan biography. So this is the one that I wanted when I got that other one. So now I have it. Now I have the Sheridan biography that I want. This is going to be a joy to reread, just a joy. I loved it when it came out in the 90s, I believe. 1997. Yeah, so that I appeased the Brattle gods and I got what I wanted. Then we have another Victober, another nod towards Victober. This is Victoria's Heyday by J.B. Priestley, an oversized, heavily illustrated thing that had a hardcover, and then it had these had paperbacks as well. Priestley got the job to do a few of these oversized, heavily illustrated sort of coffee table things. About the Edwardians, about the Victorians, about whatever, which is, in one sense, easy money. I'm sure that Priestley already had all the books that he needed to write this thing in his own personal library, so he didn't have to go to, London or anything like that. And you do that, and then you hand your manuscript in to Penguin, in this case, and let their art department do the rest. You, the writer, are not responsible for them getting Cruikshank engravings or famous Victorian paintings. You're not responsible for that. It's Penguin that's going to load this thing out and give it its second selling point. The first selling point is the author, but that selling point is over. No one knows J.B. Priestley anymore. No one reads him. Even the good companions of his, I bet, is out of print. And certainly all the rest of it is. And as far as I know, in America, there has never been a collection of his book reviews, which he wrote for a long time. Like most writers who later go on to be ashamed of my profession, he wrote book reviews for a long time. They started him off in the literary career. They made him lots of money to keep the bills running, to keep the bread coming to the table. And then, like so many literary poobahs, once they hit fame, and Priestley hit it with the Good Companions and it just kept going after that, they turn their back on that, don't want a collection of their book reviews to show up because they think it's my art in embryo. It's embarrassing. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I would love that, but I don't know that such a volume even exists. And certainly all the rest, you can't walk into a bookstore in America and see J.B. Priestley at all. But when this thing came out, did this come out in the 70s? Was that the 70s? 1972. When this came out in 1972, he would have been better known. In fact, wasn't it around the 70s that The Good Companions was getting an adaptation? Was it on BBC? Something like that? Granada TV? Well, however that is, I got this because I'm interested. I'm going to reread things like this for Victober. And also because it's a treasure trove of artwork, which is another main reason for me to get it is that it's full of artwork, and it was dirt cheap. Then we have these last four, the Victoria's heyday. These last four are slightly oversized books, but that's okay. The quest here is always to get keepers. It's to get something that I'm going to want to keep forever, rather than read it, hold on to it for a year or two, and then cycle it back to the Brattle. Ideally, I want keepers. I think I did fairly well on this trip. I think most of the things here are keepers. This next one is a royal biography, but of a different type. I had this once upon a time in a trade paperback. Didn't know it existed in a hardcover. And the trade paperback I had is long gone, so I'm happy to have it again. This is by W.M. Ormond, and it is the reign of Edward III, the great Edward III, the great Edward, whose story, his reign, the story of his reign and of his minority and all, reads like something out of fiction. It's a shame to me that Edward III has never, as far as I know, inspired a great historical novel. If any of you know of a historical novel that is his novel in the way that, Wolf Hall belongs to Cromwell, I would love to know about it. But I'm pretty sure that no one has ever written that novel about Edward III, and that just breaks my heart. Because what a story. From insurrection, he had to claim his throne. He had to claim it with blood. From usurpers, from characters, two characters, a woman and a man, straight out of villain central casting. He had to do it by a feat of daring in the dead of night, but also war and debt and intrigue and the bubonic plague. It's an incredible story. And this book, it's not very long, right? There are I have a couple of books on Edward III up on the biography shelf that are biographies of the man, and they're 10 times this long. But I remember this being bitingly good. And I didn't know it existed in hardcover. Glad to have it. Absolutely. I'll make room on the royal shelf. And this next one is a classic. I love it. I think it came out in the 1930s. No, 1960. This came out in 1960. I had a copy. I'm sure you've seen it on this channel. If any of you with your 1,000-mile stare and your face twitches have actually watched all 5,000 of my videos, you may have seen this before, but I got rid of it. The copy that I had, I got rid of. Somebody saw it on my channel, wanted it really badly. I didn't want to give it up. It was actually in my little book room, but I thought, the Brattle will provide. The person who's asking for it doesn't have access to a steady supply of secondhand books, obviously doesn't want to shop for secondhand books online. So they're just out of luck, That's not why we're here, to hoard up riches. So if somebody really wants this, your answer should be yes. I sent it off and thought, you go to the Brattle all the time. They don't have a bookstore like that, so you'll find it again. That was a long time. It's many, many years. But I did find it again. This is by Henry Marion Hall, with illustrations by John Henry Dick, and this is A Gathering of Shorebirds. All about the birds that live by the water. All different kinds of water, in all different moods. There's a woodcock, and that picture might, for those of you who have watched those 5,000 videos, that might be familiar because this illustrator did a book called Woodcock Ways, all about woodcocks. But this has shorebirds of all kinds, and every chapter on every one has a spot illustration, but then there are other illustrations throughout here as well, and these are just delightful. I'm a sucker for bird books anyway, and this one I love. It was hard to give up, and I finally found another copy, so I'm very glad to have it. I'm intimately familiar with shorebirds, certain shorebirds, because I've spent a huge amount of time on the shore, and they are fascinating to watch. They live in the liminal space between water and land. They are not fully pelagic, but they are not fully land-dwelling either, and I just think the give and take there is amazing. And the writing in this book is as good as the artwork, so very happy to have it. And then the final thing, also oversized, is part of a series that I don't think is made anymore, but boy oh boy do I recommend it. Who makes this thing? Well, this is Thames and Hudson, and this is Chronicle of the Roman Republic. This is by Philip Matziak, but this series doesn't have just the Roman Republic. It's the Chronicle of, and then whatever it is, the Egyptian pharaohs, the popes, the Russian czars, English monarchs, the Roman Empire also gets a volume. This is the Roman Republic. This is everything from Romulus all the way up to the assassination of Julius Caesar and the assumption of regnal power by Octavian, who would go on to become Augustus. So this is thousands of years, 1,000 years of Roman history, with all of the Roman names, and the value of these books is not just that the historians who write them don't rest on the visuals, although the visuals are incredible. The value is also that I have found in these books, the writers will treat the ancient sources very respectfully. They won't just discount them in favor of modern research, which I just love. And this takes you through every aspect of the Roman Republic. So you get maps that change over time. You get numismatics. You get look at that. See, that is just incredible. You get original artwork. You get interpretive artwork from later on. You get pictures of carvings and ruins as they are today, all interspersed with the writer writing about the figures, but also heavily quoting. Oh, also timelines. Also heavily quoting from the original sources. And when it comes to the end of the Republican era of Rome, we have a ton of sources. So I used to have all of the books in this series, and I could kick myself that I got rid of them. Gradually, I will find them all again, but the one that I would want more than any other would be the Roman Republic. The only one I never got rid of was the Egyptian pharaohs, which I go back to all the time. I just absolutely love it. But this will go right next to it on the shelf. This is yet another keeper. I'm thinking a lot of these are keepers. I'm hoping that anyway. So that was my Brattle trip. A pretty good Brattle trip for a Monday. So we have Chronicles of the Roman Republic. We have A Gathering of Shorebirds. Very happy to welcome this back to the library. Then we have the Reign of Edward III. Study, really lean, because it's not padding with must-haves and might-haves. It's going straight for what we know. Then Victoria's Heyday by J.B. Priestley, of late forgotten memory. Trader's Kiss by Vincent OToole. The English Abbey, part of the English Countryside series. Gibbon, Making History by Roy Porter, who I believe is dead. Why I Write, a collection of writing essays. Four authors only by Kenneth Roberts, a classic example of the Brattle will provide, only done very quickly. Then the Penguin Book of Victorian Verse in a perfect trade paperback, just perfect for replacing the battered volume that I have. The Penguin Classic of the Earl of Rochester, Juliet Barker's book on Agincourt, and finally The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating, which I will give a second try because of Britta. So there you go. That was a nice, boisterous Brattle book haul to perk up a Monday. So I'm gonna wrap this. This has gone quite on long enough. I'm gonna wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, Booktube.